Left my fiancée due to her abusive family. Weeks later, she's gone forever. I uncovered affairs and lies that shattered our entire friend group. I've been dating my fiancée for 4 years and engaged for 7 months. We were trying to arrange our wedding for the fall of next year. To put it plainly, her childhood was horrific. Her parents were raving narcissists, and she became the scapegoat for her 2 brothers. She was abused and expelled the moment she turned 18. However, she was an excellent student and a diligent worker. With several scholarships and part-time work, she established a successful profession and became self-sufficient. The trouble, however, was that she maintained communication with her family. None of them have changed. In fact, they have grown more financially reliant on her. They gradually re-entered her life, emotionally blackmailing her for support. They're not happy about it either. They're rude, condescending, and generally enjoy being a nuisance, but my fiancée can't say no, no matter what terrible things they say or how blatantly they try to intimidate her. I've always been aware of her family history and have supported her in dealing with it. However, during the last year, they've grown significantly more aggressive and disruptive. They are becoming increasingly frequent visitors to our home, leaving messes everywhere. Her mother behaves like Cinderella's stepmother. Her father consumes all of my beer and depletes half of the refrigerator, and her brothers pay visits sometimes, serving as mouthpieces for their parents. They practically trashed the place and left us to clean it up. Meanwhile, my fiancée is standing quietly in the corner, virtually shivering. I'm no fool. I understand the legitimate trauma and her desire to feel loved by them. She hopes they will eventually appreciate her. In case you were wondering, she has been in therapy for years to address this. For over 2 years, I've attempted to set boundaries and push these people away, but this is her house. She bought it. And no matter what my financial or emotional contributions are, she won't let me have a say in who comes over. She recently informed me that she wants to gain their acceptance, that they were correct about her, and that she must improve for their sake. We've had several emotional chats, full of tears and begging, in the hopes that she'll take action to improve. However, she is an adult, and I cannot force her to do anything. I love her, but I can't help but be resentful of what she's doing. It's heartbreaking to see someone you care about, who deserves so much better, blatantly ruin themselves for individuals like her family. I've tried numerous times to help her escape their grasp, but I have to think of our future. What happens when we have children? What happens if she is postpartum and invites them over? What if there is a medical emergency or our funds are short and they continue to demand money? This is the in-law family from hell, and I'll be unable to avoid them. Tomorrow, I'll inform her that I want to postpone the wedding until definite boundaries are created. If she resents it, I will leave. I can't take it any longer. I refuse to see this creeping devastation. Update. I spoke with her and everything went as expected. I'm now staying in a motel for a few days while planning my long-term move. There's still a lot going on right now, but perhaps by next week I'll be able to compile everything into a single update. Update 1. The night after I posted the first post, I decided to have a conversation with my fiancée regarding her family. However, she returned from work early the next day, and as I was already off that day, I started the conversation earlier than I had intended. Essentially, I warned her that this arrangement was unsustainable. I did not feel comfortable marrying her because of how involved her family is in her life, and I certainly did not feel good bringing a child into the world with them present. I didn't want to advise her to break off communication with them totally, but I did ask for strong restrictions on when they could come over and what they could do around the home. I also requested couples treatment before getting married. She was not pleased. She simply stared at me fiercely as I spoke, then began shrieking after I finished. She said I didn't understand their relationship, but it worked for her. I told her they were abusive users who would bleed her dry, and I had never seen them treat her with kindness. She reacted by claiming she simply needed to work harder for people to appreciate her. I basically yelled back that a child shouldn't have to beg, plead, or work to be loved by their parents. Finally, I informed her that either she established limits for them or I'd walk. She was furious, and as I was living in her home, I was booted out. I've been staying at a hotel for the past few days and my belongings have been taken out and stored. Frankly, it's been fantastic. I want to spend a few weeks with my family around mid-July before commencing house shopping on my own. I've spent the last few days relaxing, catching up on movies and video games that I hadn't had time for, and returning home to a peaceful room without her family tearing it apart. Things finally came to a head yesterday. We've had almost no contact since she kicked me out, but I know her family loves to spend the afternoon at her house every Saturday, and she generally uses me as a shield from their abuse. In a pretty selfish action, I simply left my phone muted all day and listened *Disco Elysium*. I knew she'd call for help with her family, but at this point sheer hatred had set in, and I didn't want to deal with her concerns. By the end of the night, she'd texted me over a dozen times and left 2 desperate voicemails urging me to come home. I decided to go over and check on her. Long story short, she was sobbing in the living room, and when I approached her, she literally crushed my back, clinging and crying. I waited for her to calm down before asking what had happened. Apparently, her mom and brother stopped by to demand money and utter awful things to her. She asked me to come help, but I had been ignoring her. When she sought to get assistance from one of her pals, everyone essentially said no. That's when it all clicked for her, and she eventually kicked her family out. But not before they said some truly terrible things to her, which I will not repeat. She repeatedly apologized to me and told me to come home. I told her openly that I had been harboring strong feelings of anger toward her for some years, and that while I loved her and knew that it was trauma rather than her being outright abusive, there were huge issues that needed to be addressed before we could move forward. First, she sells the house and relocates. We make nearly the same amount of money and plan to buy a property together. I am an adult man, and I will not live in a home where I have no equal agency. Second, her relatives will never enter it. They will never come over, and if they do, I will treat them in a hostile manner. Third, she sees a new therapist and we begin premarital counseling. Fourth, she never forced me to interact with her relatives again. Fifth, we will maintain little communication with her family for the time being, but make no mistake. We are moving toward complete no contact from her end. I told her that I loved her. We've been together for a long time and have wonderful memories, and I know she's been abused. But these conditions cannot be changed. If she has a problem with any of them, we will have to part ways. She informed me she's known for a while that her family is poisonous and unhealthy, and she wants to make changes, but some of them will take time to manifest. For the time being, I plan to stay in the hotel till I return to see my family. She is welcome to come over, but I have made it obvious that her home is not a place I want to be. We both have the day off tomorrow, so we'll spend it here and maybe go out. This is definitely not over yet. But I may not publish again until mid-August or so. Update 2. Despite my best intentions to not update until much later, with the hopes of improving my relationship with my fiancée and her establishing boundaries with her toxic family, we have now split up. Essentially what occurred was that after last weekend, when I left her to deal with her family on her own, she appeared to fully understand the issue and was open to adjustments, including limits and a possible transfer. We spent Monday and Tuesday hanging out at my hotel before I returned to my family for a few weeks. She was scheduled to come over the previous night, but her texts were pretty ambiguous. She arrived considerably later than usual, and I sensed something was wrong. She basically went off on me, calling me abusive, overbearing, extremely demanding and unsupportive. It took me 5 seconds to realize she was reciting a planned speech from her parents. To be honest, I was so irritated at this point that, despite taking a tremendous risk on her, I chose to be a jerk about it. I questioned if her relatives had told her to say this. She said they proposed it, although she came up with it herself. Sure. I requested her to explain in detail what I had done wrong. She stated I was parasitic on her. I reminded her that I was paying 50/50ths for her mortgage, electricity and groceries, and that I own and pay for my own car, as well as a job that pays the same as hers. Unlike her parasitic parents, who demand cash every week and loot the kitchen on weekends. I advised her to try again with something better. She appeared flustered and said I was attempting to isolate her. I smirked and informed her that I had always supported her many friendships, which she ended on her own since no one wanted to deal with her family or be used as a shield like me. At this point, I was nearly demanding to know why she was so determined to wreck her life for these individuals. She simply shouted that I don't understand her family and that she's just trying to reclaim their affection, and she was really ranting at that point. It's really incredible to see up close. I went to a few subreddits to get perspectives, and if you're familiar with them, you'll see how people who have been abused by their own family can be so completely broken that it wrecks their brain to the point where they believe they are the problem and deserve the abuse. That was exactly how she was. Completely shattered and unable to accept help. She didn't want to improve. She only wanted to get worse. The knowledge hit me hard, like a truck. I felt like a fool for attempting, even though it was what I was supposed to do in the first place. She was virtually insane by this point, and I was simply mentally weary and needed her to go before the cops arrived. She eventually went, but a few concerned neighbors checked on me. Some of her friends are aware, as they have messaged me to inquire about the situation. I told them the truth. I needed to be alone to think about what to do next. They have now revealed that she has delivered similar rants in response to their concern for her. One had even heard that she could lose her job. She is certainly taking a mental break from my understanding. She is now fully alone, plunging into a miserable, lonely existence. There's nothing I can do for her at this point, and as selfish as it may sound, I'm simply relieved it's over. Update 3. Things had mostly been wrapped up, but there remained a few loose ends. I absolutely failed to change my mailing address, which I should have done right away, so a few crucial things were delivered to her residence. I had to go get them, as well as a few other items I had left behind that I had decided I wanted to keep. She was being difficult and did not answer messages about them, so I had to go retrieve them myself. I had brought a common acquaintance just in case. Fortunately, she was cooperative in allowing me to retrieve my belongings, which was not a big deal. Everything else was another story. She said a lot of unpleasant things to me, including how she was already sleeping around, how pleased she was that I was gone, and how she was finally free from me. She said she'd be so much better off without me. All typical insults and dreadful things you'd expect from a bad breakup. You know what? It was clear that it was a scripted script from her family, and you could tell she was miserable. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. The house was a mess. She wasn't even yelling. She sounded drained and broken as she said it. She didn't even smile as she spoke. Her face was distorted with hatred and wrath. She wasn't the lady I knew anymore. That individual was gone. When I was about to leave, she was still going on. I got fed up and told her something like, "Congratulations, your friends are gone, your human shields are gone, your engagement is over, and your support is gone. Anyone who has ever treated you with dignity is no longer alive. It's only you and your family. I hope you're content while they bleed you dry." It most likely did not go precisely as described, but something similar. She simply stood there, stared at me indifferently, and walked away as I walked out the door. Tiffany, a common friend, inquired about my well-being as we were leaving. I reassured her that I was and explained that I was only preparing to return home next week. She also confirmed that she had heard that my ex had been fired for failing to show up for work for several days and effectively disappearing. They're going to try an intervention next week and have asked if I can participate, but I'm not postponing my trip because frankly, I just want a clean break. I know that if I continue involved, I will only see a steady decline into either a complete breakdown or suicide. I simply cannot do that. Despite this, I'm excited about the future. I realized I overlooked far too many red signs in the beginning. Despite all that has transpired, I am confident that I will do well. I expect this to be my final update. I'm still in town till Sunday afternoon, so something may happen while I'm here, but it won't be exciting. Update 4. I'm currently in my home state visiting family, reacquainting myself with the place. I've decided to stay here permanently and have begun the long process of looking for properties in the region. I've been doing well, going out with friends and family. A handful of mutual friends with my ex-fiancée have told me what's been going on, and things appear to be improving. The intervention was supposed to take place on Sunday, but Saturday night after her family paid her another visit, she called pals in a fit of mania. It appears that she has now realized how horribly she screwed up. It was a full-blown panic episode and meltdown that landed her in the emergency room. Needless to say, she finally admits how miserable she is and how horribly she has messed up her life. Apparently, she attempted to phone me, but I had blocked her. She still has a job, and the information about her losing it was incorrect, but she is hanging by a thread there. Her supervisor has effectively told her to take a few weeks off work to clear her mind. Her friend circle is quite close. My ex was a really helpful and supportive friend, so it's understandable that her friends are going to such lengths to aid her. However, there is an implicit agreement that if she returns to her old ways, they will all allow her to sink on her own. She's doing as well as can be expected, however her family has continued to bother her with phone calls and messages. They attempted to visit her residence but were strongly redirected by friends and neighbors. I hope she understands the type of support system she has. As trashy as family arguments generally are, her parents and brothers have taken it to Facebook, which, according to what I've heard, has worked to my ex's advantage. It has exposed their behavior to a larger audience and appears to have silenced them for a short time. Finally, she had one of our common friends deliver a note to me. Essentially, She was confessing that all of the horrific things she said to me were lies and that her family had pressured her to say them, which I had known all along. She apologized for how things ended and hoped we could reconnect someday. Unfortunately, I had to explain that we needed to stay apart for good and that she should focus on her recuperation. I informed her that while I still care for her and wish her the best, this was our final goodbye. The message appears to have been sent and her friends are assisting her in processing it. She has a long way to go, but I hope she finds peace as I do. Comments. OOP regarding the ex's parents' opinions. OOP, they simply tried to play the "your daughter is ungrateful and cruel" card with close friends and family, only for a slew of people to call them out on their actions. Take this with a grain of salt, as it is unsubstantiated, but according to one source, in retribution, people began phoning one of the brothers' workplaces and leaving critical reviews on their Facebook page, airing all of the dirty laundry. It's not going well for him, although this is unconfirmed. Top comment. Her parents and brothers have escalated their family feud on Facebook. There were no falsehoods discovered. I applaud OOP for avoiding that disaster as much as possible. It's much better for this woman if she understands that her decisions have real repercussions, and if she doesn't want such consequences in the future, she needs to perform serious self-improvement. Update 5. I've been doing pretty well since I returned home. All of my belongings arrived safely, and I am now living with my family while I look for a new home. I've set up my employment here and have been back at work for the past week. I occasionally come here to comment and post, but that is all. Unfortunately, despite the best intentions of my ex's friends, the scenario has now ended in the worst possible way, and the friend group has been fractured as a consequence. My ex took her own life. Almost everything I'm about to say I learned last night. Since I left, her friends had been assisting her in getting back on her feet, encouraging her to seek better therapy, establishing boundaries with her family, and getting her out of the house. They definitely went above and above. Tiffany, the friend who was there to help me the last time I spoke face to face with my ex, became suspicious when she noticed my ex being touchy-feely with her boyfriend Daniel, while they were hanging out at her place. I don't sure exactly when things progressed, but Tiffany ultimately got hold of her boyfriend's phone when he was sleeping and discovered highly sexual messages between him and my ex. These texts were more than 5 months old, which surprised me greatly. Tiffany clearly lost it and informed everyone. Nobody could have predicted the drama that unfolded. Daniel, Tiffany's now ex, threw another member of the friend group, Joseph, under the bus, alleging he had covered for him. Joseph's girlfriend in turn dumped him and kicked him out of her home. A friend group of about 9 people, including my ex, nearly imploded. Tiffany and Joseph's ex are the only ones that continue to communicate. Mind you, when I was being told all of this, I was informed that, despite the fact that I had been gone for almost a month, everything had occurred within the first week of my absence. My ex immediately lost her entire support system and was accused of everything. This simply exacerbated her already deteriorating mental health. Of course, everyone was curious as to why she had done such things to one of her closest friends. She simply stated that they had become close and that he was a terrific support system for her. Of course, she'd told her family about him, and they approved of him over me. She asked him over the night I left for the motel. Apparently, her ultimate goal was to leave me for him. He wouldn't leave Tiffany for her, and he despised hearing about her family, so he certainly wouldn't pursue anything other than a hidden affair. I expected to be much furious than I was, but I had already started to move on. I had just had a comprehensive health exam at my new doctor's office and received a clean bill of health, with no STDs, so I didn't have to worry about that. Getting outraged would be counterproductive at this stage. I was told that I was informed late because no one knew how to break the news to me, which is understandable. So yep, my ex was absolutely shunned, even by Tiffany's ex, who simply disappeared. She was blocked and left to cope with her troubles on her own. Tiffany simply knew that she had lost her work for good and spent all of her leisure time with her family. They had finally triumphed, in a sense. It was discovered 2 nights earlier that she had committed suicide at home. Her relatives discovered her. When the medical team arrived, one of the old friends from the neighborhood showed up. Her family was there and they didn't seem to care. Tiffany contacted me last night just to let me know. There were other messages, and she asked me, as gently as possible, if I wanted mine for closure. I honestly don't know what to do about it. I'm experiencing a lot of mental whiplash right now. I never knew this woman. I've had to acknowledge over the last month, since returning home, that she was abusive in our relationship because of everything she put me through with her family. Now it appears that it was a ploy to drive me away so she could be with another man who her family appeared to like. This confuses me even more, because what did he have that I didn't? Did they simply love watching her life fall apart? Was there anything real about her? Was there anything real about the folks with whom I spent years of my life? Returning home was the best decision I've ever made, and I now have complete evidence of that. I can begin therapy to work through this issue, spend time with a group of individuals who are truly trustworthy in person rather than online, and have relatives nearby for support. But yes, this will be with me for a long time. Comments? Comment. Do not read the letter. It will do you no good. Give it to a therapist to read, have them reseal it in another envelope and let them decide whether or not you should read it based on your mental health. Or if it should be unread and burned. OOP. I'm not interested in the letter or anything related to them. It's time to go on with my life. Now to the next story. Story 2. Fooled my cheating wife into thinking I was unfaithful, then ghosted her on Christmas Day after meticulously planning a year-long revenge. Here's the backstory. My future ex-wife is my high school sweetheart. We started dating in 1992, when we were both 17. We're both 45 and have been together since. She is the only woman I've ever been with in my life. We married 5 years later, at the age of 22, right out of college. A year later, we welcomed our first 2 children, both boys who are now 22 and 17. I gave her 23 years, built her a home, and worked tirelessly to provide her the life she desired. Sure, we had our issues, but what marriage doesn't? Even in the darkest of situations, we found a way to persevere and emerge stronger, making the revelation of her affair all the more startling. Flashback to March 2020. I had a feeling something wasn't right. We had been in a funk for approximately 2 months before. I was still unable to move while recovering from reconstructive knee surgery after tearing my ACL in the fall of 2019. At the time, my knee had only around 55% range of motion, which hindered my ability to conduct a variety of household tasks. I was out on workers' compensation because I was injured on the job, so I couldn't do my usual housework. My sons did their best, but duties that only I could do had to be postponed, or my wife had to take them on, which she detested. Things also came to a standstill in the bedroom. It had already slowed down before my crash, but in my current state, it came to a complete stop. During these months, Sue, we'll call her that, spent more time after work mingling with co-workers. From November 2019 until March 2020, it was a reoccurring event for her. Naturally, I rejected it. I'd had no reason to be concerned or wary of her over the previous 23 years. She had her friends, I had mine, and we had mutual pals. I could hang out with my friends all the time without issue. Everything was above board. However, in January of that year, I started to notice something unusual. Sue was growing increasingly distant. Sure, we were in a funk, but she had never denied me affection until that time. The usual hugs and kisses came to a stop. Her phone, which had previously been nearly tethered to her hand, was now secure. She was becoming more private, despite the fact that she was frequently sharing DIY ideas, recipes and memes with me. Her interactions with me became more snippy, as if she couldn't be bothered. So we're now in March. COVID has arrived, and New York City is under lockdown. Our chosen vocations are essential, thus neither of us had to work from home. I had just been cleared to return to work after being out for 5 months and I was eager to go back to it. 5 months of sitting on my ass, rehabbing my knee and being unable to do physical things drove me insane. For context, I adore physical activities. I'm an active martial artist who goes to the gym 4 days a week, in addition to all of the housework I handle. Within a week or 2 of the lockout, my soon-to-be ex-wife informed me that she would need to resume working extra hours. I didn't think much of it because of her profession. I expected it to be every other day, but it was every day, for more than an hour or 2. She'd get home 3 or more hours later, shower, spend some time with me and our 17-year-old son, our 22-year-old was staying with his girlfriend across town, and then go straight to bed. As my knee recovered more movement, we continued our intimacy, but as one might anticipate, she was not intellectually or emotionally present as I quickly noticed. By early April the picture was getting clearer for me. All of the signs led to her having an affair. That was the moment I realized I needed answers. I scoured the internet for indicators of adultery in a partner and she checked almost every box. My search query grew to how do I find proof? I started with her social media, looking over her Facebook posts from several months ago. It was the usual, images of us and our sons, some with her friends, and some from her nights out with coworkers. These images included a mix of her closest co-workers and a few folks I had never met. But one thing stood out. Practically every picture featured the same guy. Every photograph he appeared in showed him standing uncomfortably close to her, his arm on her shoulder or his hand on her lower back. Far too close for a guy I'd never met. Needless to say, that left a nasty taste in my mouth, but it was far from the worst of it. The worst part was realizing he was her Facebook friend and Instagram following. So naturally, I searched for his Facebook account, only to discover that I had been barred. Why the hell was I unable to view this guy's Facebook profile when he was friends with her? At this point, I was in full Batman detective mode. I wasn't even attempting to deny it. I knew she was cheating on me with this man. My goal became to learn how long it had been going on. That was exactly what I did in April and May. Until then, I had no idea how much data could be pulled from phone records, text messages and email archives. We have a family cell phone contract, so I had access to a significant amount of data. My soon-to-be ex-wife's data history revealed that the two most common phone numbers she used between October 2019 and April 2020 were mine and one I had never seen before. Can you guess whose number it was? A quick Google search revealed that the individual in the photographs was the identical one who had blocked me on Facebook. We'll just name him P since that's who he is. The picture is clearer at this point, but many of their discussions and texts were disjointed, so she deleted a big number of them. I knew she was cheating on me with this person. But the statistics didn't prove it. I needed more evidence. At this point, I told my best friend Oz what I had discovered. He asked if I had questioned her with facts. I said no because I felt it wasn't enough. That's when he told me of an app I might use to track her communications in real time. I won't mention the name here because of the rules, but I installed it, linked it to our data plan, and waited. Within days, I saw it. A text exchange between the two of them, discussing how much fun they had the night before and making plans to do it again that weekend. Boom. Gut punch. To say I was devastated is an understatement. I suppose that was my D-Day. For the next 2 days, I was completely broken. I purposefully distanced myself from her. During the 2 days after D-Day, she noticed something was wrong. She tried to console me and ask what was wrong, but I ignored her and walked away. I couldn't even look at her. This woman to whom I had given 23 years of my life, everything I could as a husband, and she had left our marriage for a man barely 5 years older than our eldest child. By the 3rd day, I was no longer depressed, but enraged. I emailed Oz to inform him that my suspicions were confirmed. He asked if I confronted her and I responded no. I sought retaliation. I didn't just want to divorce her, I wanted to destroy her. I planned to undermine her life and ruin her. It would take some time, but I had a plan. In my studies and research on infidelity, I came across a statement that struck a chord with me. The enemy of infidelity is unpredictability. That was going to be the core of my strategy. I meant to make her life hell on wheels while quietly planning my escape. So it's early June and I still have the app installed. Almost every night I gather as much data as possible. I see their back and forth texts. They talk like they're in a full-fledged relationship, sexting, flirty romantic things, nudes, the works. At that point, I stopped looking at anything and focused solely on gathering information and cataloging everything on my personal server. Meanwhile, I began engaging in odd behaviors. I began leaving at irregular hours and arriving home much later than she did. I spent more time on my phone than usual while with her, and when she asked what I was doing, I just replied, "Just stuff," and put it away. I also changed the login credentials for everything so she couldn't get into any of my stuff. Throughout our marriage, we had never kept anything from one another. However, about the time I believe her romance started, she changed her Facebook and phone passwords, blaming recent security breaches. Yeah, that's an excellent reason to conceal an affair from your husband. I notified Oz about my plans, as well as my older sister and 2 other close friends. These are the people I trust with my life, and I have sworn them to secrecy. To clarify, Oz and I have been friends since we were children. We've known Joey and Na, our other 2 friends, since high school. Keep Na in mind, she will have a role later on. In July, my soon-to-be ex-wife was absolutely paranoid. She was texting and calling me more frequently, asking whether I'd be home when she got back, when I was coming home, what I was doing and so on. I could see the seed I planted in her mind a month ago starting to sprout, notably in her interactions with P. She was confiding in him, expressing her worries and perplexity, and warning him that I was becoming cold and distant. This woman has a lot of nerve. During these interactions with P, she even suggested that they stop meeting at our house since she wasn't sure if I'd just show up, confirming of course that she had brought this guy into my home. Thanks, Sue. P asked her in that conversation if she was afraid I was cheating on her, which irritated her. I can't tell you how much pleasure and laughter I had from reading that exchange. My cheating wife arguing with her affair partner about whether she was angry at her husband for perhaps cheating on her. Oh, how ironic. Please bear in mind that I was not hooking up with anyone. When I left the house, I was usually at Oz's or Joey's, drinking, watching fights and socializing with my brothers. Or I was at my big sister's house, hanging out with her and my brother-in-law, who is like an older brother to me. My sister is 52, and her husband is 58. I had told them about my soon-to-be ex-wife's infidelity, but not about my plan. I couldn't risk it because my brother-in-law is a bit of a blabbermouth. Moving forward to October, things started to heat up. Sue was completely aware that I was intentionally drifting away from her after 3 months of my false romance. I hadn't touched her once between the day I carried out my plan and the day she confronted me. October 20th, 2020. No embraces, kisses, or attempts to initiate intimacy, none. Not that she needed it. She still got it from P, whether at his place or in a hotel. That afternoon she called me at work, which was not unusual before anything began, but it hadn't happened in a while. She implored me to come home immediately from work, saying she had something essential to tell me. I won't lie, I partly expected her to admit her infidelity. However, she didn't. Instead I returned home and asked her whether I was furious with her. The nerve. She commented that I'd spent much too much time away from home, hadn't shown her any affection, and that our intimacy had faded. She expressed fear that I was driving her away because of my animosity for how she treated me when I was rehabbing my knee. Then came the punchline. She gasped and asked whether I was cheating on her. Folks, I fell to the floor laughing hysterically. And by hysterically, I mean like the Joker laughing so hard. On the surface, it appeared to her that I was laughing at the prospect of being unfaithful, but I was actually laughing at the irony of the circumstances. I was on the floor for over 2 minutes, weeping and banging my fists in hysterics before I could calm myself and react. I sat up, looked her in the eyes for the first time in months, shook my head and did not speak. I got up, brushed myself off, kissed the top of her head and started settling in for the night. Later that night, as I was in my office, I wanted to see what she was messaging P about what had just happened. I opened the app, and sure enough, they were texting in real time. She told P, "I know he's cheating on me. I questioned him tonight and he simply laughed in my face. He collapsed on the floor and laughed for almost 5 minutes. It did not take 5 minutes. He no longer cares about my feelings. I'm not sure how or why, but he's left. I realize I've lost him. This is karma, and I know it." The smile I had on my face while reading must have looked like the Cheshire Cat. Her heart was breaking. P tried to console her, telling her that if I cared enough about her, she wouldn't have had to turn to him for what I wasn't giving her. Her statements, however, suggested that she was now having doubts. She had the audacity to quit our marriage because I was unable to perform my duties as a husband due to a real injury, and she pursued the affair for approximately a year. But was the thought of losing me to another woman enough to make her reconsider? What a weakling. Throughout this, I was also implementing the second component of my strategy, getting my finances in order. In September, I met with a family attorney to start the divorce process. With the material I had gathered up to that point, I was convinced I could nail her to the wall in a divorce case, especially because New York is an at-fault state. My lawyer advised me to prepare all of my accounts in anticipation of the approaching asset division. I went a step further, secretly removing all of my funds from our joint account and deposited them into my own. As part of the second phase, I began searching for an apartment. Now it's November, and my behavior hasn't changed. In fact, I have turned it up. This is when my friend Na enters the picture. Na and Sue were never close. I met Na during my freshman year of high school, 2 years before meeting Sue. Sue saw Na as a threat, even though she was my closest female friend. Sue always gave Na an implied "I don't trust her" vibe. Sue never addressed it directly, but it was obvious to everyone paying attention. Na, on the other hand, felt no affection for Sue. Na pointed out early in my relationship with Sue that she was imposing herself on our social circle, but I did not do the same for Sue's friends. That infuriated Na since she knew why Sue was doing it. Sue still doesn't have any male friends in her circle, save for P, but Na is the only female in mine. Na had been kept overseas because of the epidemic before returning to New York City on November 3rd. Joey and I decided to celebrate her return by hosting a modest dinner and drinks party at Joey's house. There were just 5 of us: Joey, Joey's wife, Na's sister, Na, and me. We followed the CDC's guidelines because we take COVID seriously. Na, being the mastermind that she is, concocted a sinister scheme to enrage Sue. She suggested we take some photos of Sue and P, similar to those I found months ago, and post them on Facebook. This is precisely what we did. Sue learned about it on the 5th, when a few friends viewed my updates and saw how uncomfortably close Na and I appeared in the images. Sue was perplexed by this, especially because she still suspected I was cheating. I'm almost convinced she wanted to accuse Na, but she knew Na had been in Europe for the majority of the year. Still, it didn't stop her from attempting to dress me down that night since, as she described it, I was handsy in the pictures. I recognized this as a good opportunity to deliver the opening jab for my knockout punch. I inquired, "So how about the images of you and P from last year? He was really handsy in them, but did you notice how upset I was about it?" Deer in headlights. It was the first time I'd mentioned the guy's name in all of this. The hamster wheel in her head began to whirl in real time as she struggled to understand those photographs. She had no idea I had seen them up until that time. That's how rarely I use Facebook. When I do, it's like an event for others, which is why the images with Nina drew so much attention in our networks. She explained them away. "He's like that with everyone. He's just a very friendly guy. I get how it appears, but there is nothing there. I am sorry if the photographs offended you. I'll erase them." No, the photographs were not the cause of my problems. The thought of you banging this guy for a year while lying to me about working extra hours and hanging out with friends has destroyed me. However, as Lieutenant Worf from Star Trek TNG memorably stated, vengeance is a dish best served cold. Sue became overly attached and attentive to me following that night, which was frustrating. She'd want to begin warmth and closeness, but I'd stop her at every opportunity. I was constantly recording whatever she said to P. By this point I had gone entirely numb. Any motivation I had to save my marriage was gone. I checked out on the day I executed the first phase of my strategy. She was telling him that I had gotten worse, that she didn't know what to do and that she believed I detested her. I did. Then she dropped the bombshell. She announced she could no longer see P. Her guilt was intense, and she felt like punishment was strangling her. She couldn't risk losing me. She claimed to love P deeply, but she was still in love with me and sought to save her marriage before losing me. No, my sweetheart. You were about 8 months too late for that. P lost it, saying beautiful things like, "He doesn't love you the way I love you. You are making a mistake. You can't just dismiss me like that." That text chain was their last until around 3 weeks ago. Sue was in uncertainty for the rest of November and December, trying to figure out where my headspace was while also unsure whether I was being unfaithful. Meanwhile, P was constantly blowing up her phone. But she did not respond. I noticed her checking her phone regularly, but she quickly set it aside. Meanwhile, phase 2 of the plan was officially finished. The divorce papers were completed. I'd found a studio apartment in Co-op City, a neighborhood recognizable to New Yorkers, and signed a 2-year contract. All of my money was in my own account. I was ready to throw my haymaker. Now it is Thanksgiving. My oldest son and his girlfriend were throwing a modest reunion for our immediate families, which included my oldest, his girlfriend, her parents, she is an only child, myself, Sue, and our youngest. We had a great night. My oldest girlfriend is training to be a chef, and she did all of the cooking herself. Let me tell you, the chick can cook. To give the impression that nothing was wrong between Sue and me, I expressed affection for her several times that evening, including kisses on the cheek, charming small hugs, and wrapping my arms over her shoulders from behind. She was aware of and loved the gestures. Keep in mind that this was the first time I had touched her since kissing the top of her head the night she confronted me in October, roughly 2 months prior. I won't lie, I was horrified by it, but I had no choice. I could not jeopardize the plan. My distancing from her in front of our sons, my oldest's girlfriend, and her parents would raise alarms. My youngest elected to spend the night with his elder brother, so Sue and I returned home. On the drive home, she thanked me for being so nice to her and said, "I don't know what you're going through, baby, but I'm here for you." I had to stop myself from busting out laughing again and answered, "I know, I just need time." For the first time since spring, we had sex that evening. I thought, what the hell? With what I'm going to do, I might as well get some work done before eliminating her from my life. I won't get into specifics, but it wasn't love. When I finished, she was a ball of flesh laying there, trying to figure out which way the truck that had run her over had gone. There will be no cuddling or anything afterwards. To her amazement, I just got up, washed and fell asleep in my office. However, I wore a condom for the first time in nearly 2 decades. She was perplexed, but she didn't ask questions. I had no intention of going raw on her, knowing she had done so with P for months. I awakened the next day and launched my handy surveillance program. For the first time in weeks, she responded to P. The dude went full Neela. He expressed his feelings for her, saying she was wasting her time trying to rekindle a dying flame in me, and that she had been in prison with me for 23 years and deserved to feel the love and affection of a man who adored her. Mind you, this guy is 27 years old, only 5 years older than our oldest son, and he was that hurled at a 45-year-old married mother of 2. What a fantastic high-quality guy she chose to destroy our marriage and the home we had built for ourselves. Isn't he a beautiful boy with a compassionate side? She responded by saying essentially the same thing she had when they last spoke. She loved him and enjoyed their time together, but she couldn't lose me. She stated that I was still the love of her life, but there would always be a place in her heart for him, and they could be friends if he so wished. But their physical relationship had ended. He persuaded her to meet him one last time that week, and she consented. One more for the road, right? Who am I to say anything? That's just what I did to her the night before. Of course, I saved all of this in the archive I had built. On December 4th, the third and final phase of Operation Shinobi Ghost started. The divorce paperwork was completed, my new place of residence was established, and now I needed to gradually begin moving my possessions out of the house. But first, I needed to tell my boys. That Friday night, I invited my oldest to join me at my office. I laid everything out on the table, except for the specifics. Their mother had been cheating on me for about a year, and I was preparing to file for divorce. My 17-year-old was particularly touched by this since he had recently experienced his first taste of infidelity. His first girlfriend had cheated on him just 4 months previously. The notion of his own mother being capable of doing such a thing tore his heart apart for the second time. My oldest handled it much better and suggested that he take his brother in to live with him until everything was settled, which I agreed to. We packed some of his possessions and he inquired, "Are you going to be okay?" I replied, "Yes, youngster, I am going to be okay, as are you. We will be all right, I promise." Then they were gone. The most difficult part was now accomplished and it was time to arm the nuclear weapons. Over the next 2 weeks, Oz would help me remove some of my most sensitive belongings out of the house on a regular basis. I gave him a list of everything he needed to get while Sue and I were at work and left him with a spare key. Sue would not have realized anything was missing until someone told her. I also obtained a new phone and phone number, which I shared with everyone who needed to know: Oz, Joey, my boys, my big sister, and my mother. Meanwhile, I continued the deception with Sue and she had no idea. I gave her bits and pieces of affection to keep her off the trail while she was still in contact with P, not as much as before, but there was still an emotional connection. The fog was faint, but still there. All the while, I was gathering, and I mean everything. Every bit of data I'd saved since the beginning of the plan, call logs, texts, images, emails, everything, and printing it. I must have spent over $1,500 on Staples supplies like printer ink, paper and binders. I organized everything chronologically from the beginning of the affair to the end 2 weeks ago in December. 14 binders. I then placed each one in a box, gift-wrapped it, and addressed it to a variety of people, including my mother. My father died 7 years ago, her parents, her 2 sisters, her brother, her HR department. Did I mention P works for the same company, and there is an express rule against intercompany relationships because of the nature of what she does. Several of her friends, P and her parents. I took all of those parcels to the post office and got them shipped out on December 16th. Delivery is scheduled between December 22nd and December 24th. Perfect. So we are now on Christmas Eve. Sue returns home at the usual time, unsure if she has seen P. On the 18th, I stopped tracking her on the app, believing I'd gotten enough use out of it. As usual, she showers, spends time with me, and then I blow her out on the living room couch. Then she retires for the night. The final stage had arrived. The nuclear weapon I had been constructing since June was about to be fired. I arose in the middle of the night and wrapped one of the 3 remaining binders with the divorce papers glued to the inner cover, then placed it on my side of the bed with a Merry Christmas greeting. Next to it, I left my old phone and my lawyer's business card. I packed up the rest of my most important items, enough to fill 2 backpacks, and left the house I'd lived in for 23 years for the final time. That was a week ago, buddies. Sue believes that I have vanished, been shadowed, or ghosted. She is blocked on Facebook, but she hasn't blocked me, so I'm keeping track of the effects. It's simply great. My packages have arrived at their destinations, and Sue has been crucified. Her younger sister dressed her completely down. Both of her parents have condemned her. My mother totally destroyed her, like holy crap. I know my mother is harsh, but what she called Sue was ridiculous. Sue has been feverishly trying to find out whether anyone knows where I am, but those who do are not saying anything. She's desperately attempting to contact me all over her Facebook feed, possibly because she knows I'm looking. But I won't say anything to her without my lawyer present. That'll be the next time I share oxygen with her. She can't use the narrative to make me appear bad because I've exposed her to everyone she cares about. According to a mutual acquaintance who works for the same company, she and P will be placed on administrative leave starting tomorrow. So, excellent news, she will most certainly be unemployed by 2021. Regarding the final 2 binders, one has been delivered to my lawyer as the final piece of evidence for my impending divorce. The last one I stored in my storage unit, to be burnt in Joey's fire pit after the divorce is finalized. Do I feel sad about it? Not in the least. For 23 years, I treated her well. I gave her the home she wanted, the family she sought, the life I thought we both deserved, and unconditional love. Never did I falter. Never did I stray. Never did I consider breaking my vows. When an issue developed that I suspected was interfering with our marriage, I addressed her and explained the situation, and we worked together to remedy it as best we could. She chose to seek solace in another man's bed rather than come to me and communicate her discontent with her current intimate situation. She decided to go out with a young punk who gave her tingles. So no, I'm not sorry for whatever I did to or for her. I do not care if she ends up in hell. The most I could lose is my home, a car, and possibly a few $100s each month in alimony. However, because the divorce is filed under the adultery statute in New York State, which is an at-fault state, this may be waived based on the overwhelming evidence I've shown. She's dead to me, and I'll never look back. Quick edit. Under certain circumstances, NYS is not fully to blame. Yet a divorce can be filed at fault, as my lawyer has advised me. I'll meet with the soon-to-be ex-wife and her lawyer tomorrow. I suppose I will just post an update here. Update. I deceived my unfaithful soon-to-be ex-wife into thinking I was cheating, then disappeared and served her on Christmas Day. Christmas Day was the first full day I spent in my new apartment. It's still a work in progress because I want to buy more stuff, but I consider it my home because I'll be here for at least 2 years. My boys and the eldest girlfriend came over and spent most of the day with me. The girlfriend brought over homemade snacks and made a great lunch. I got to sit down and talk to my sons in a way I hadn't in a long time, which was nice. My big sister also stopped over with additional snacks and hung out with us. It was the first time she had seen her nephews in nearly a year. Having all of them there was extremely beneficial to me because I feel I would have drunk myself to death if I had been alone. Everyone left about 8 p.m., and I decided to go hang out with Joey and his wife Claudia. I hung out with them for a few hours, had a few beers, and then headed home. The next important advancement happened last week, on December 29, 2020. Nina texted me about midday, asking whether I was busy that night. I of course was not, so we agreed to meet after I ended work. She showed up and we went to a diner near where I worked. We're doing indoor eating at 25% capacity in NYC thanks to the Rona, but there's rarely a wait because many of us don't eat out very much these days. Regardless, once we were seated and had ordered our dinner, Nina essentially laid all of her cards on the table. And I knew what was coming. She basically admitted that she had liked me since we were teenagers but never had the opportunity to tell me because Sue swooped in and took me before she could. For context, I've known Nina for 2 years longer than Sue. As previously said, she is the 4th point on my social square, with myself, Oz and Joey. We were the social misfits in high school, raver youngsters who didn't fit into any of the other cliques. Nina struggled with her weight and developed diabetes. She was the heavy-set goth lady who was really cool, but no man ever looked twice at her. However, we have always had chemistry. Nina now works as a personal trainer and yoga instructor. She was the ugly duckling that grew into a stunning swan, if I may say so. Long story short, we decided to start dating after my divorce was finalized, And yes, I slept with her that night. We went back to my new house and had a terrific time. Am I ashamed of having slept with her? Hell no. Nina has been a more valuable friend to me than Sue ever was. That's not to say Sue wasn't my best friend, but Nina has always been there for me over the nearly 25 years I've known her, even standing back from her own feelings to allow me to pursue and eventually create a relationship with Sue. That moved me on a level I did not expect. That amount of selflessness for another person is the essence of true love. I know it sounds like I'm just convincing myself that sleeping with her was the right decision, but it was. And I aim to devote my complete attention to discovering what lies ahead for Nina and me. On to yesterday. Yesterday, I met with my wife and her lawyer to talk about our divorce. It's been 2 weeks since I ghosted my soon-to-be ex-wife. This past Monday, I received a phone call alerting me that Sue's attorney had set a conference with us to discuss the terms of divorce for January 6, 2021, which was yesterday. I met with my lawyer on Tuesday morning to discuss the terms I wanted. Sue filed for an uncontested divorce due to spousal neglect. My terms include a comprehensive distribution of assets, and I will sell her half of the house ownership. She may keep it. We keep our cars in good working order. I keep my Poconos cabin, and under the pretense of marital neglect, she receives no spousal support from me. My 17-year-old son, whom I will refer to as 17 inches from now on, is free to choose who he wants to live with following the divorce, which will most likely be me. So on Wednesday, I arrived at my lawyer's office dressed as Johnny Cash. My wife and her attorney were there, and she looked like a wreck, barely holding it together. I gave her a stern look. I won't burden you with legal language, but her lawyer proposed terms of reconciliation. I dismissed them almost as soon as she finished explaining the contents of the request. Long story short, we agreed on a formal separation that would result in an uncontested divorce. The only modification is that I will pay her $653 per month in temporary spousal support to cover the cost of utilities until she finds work again. Yes, she was fired for messing about with P. He was also let go. I agreed to pay for up to a year after the finalization. I make enough money that it won't hurt me financially if she takes her time looking for a new job, and she has enough savings to last a long time. She is alone after a full calendar year since the divorce was finalized. A little price to pay for getting rid of her crooked ass. Things will take around 3 months to finish, so provided nothing goes wrong, I should be rid of her by early April. After the meeting, my lawyer said his goodbyes and promised to call me to keep me informed on the status of the filing. Sue followed me down the street pleading, "Can we talk?" I figured I'd provide her with at least that. She remained calm during the discussion but burst into tears outside, apologizing and explaining that she never intended for it to get as far as it did. She explained that she never anticipated falling in love with P, but when she felt I was cheating, she realized how terrible it was to betray her own marriage in this manner. She begged me if I could ever find it in my heart to forgive her, and if we could try again in a few years. She can't imagine her life without me. I advised her to start envisioning it right away because it would be the last time I spoke or saw her. I informed her that 17 inches is virtually a man and capable of making his own decisions about his future. I claim I gave her half of my life and all of my unconditional love, but she, in her own words, fell in love with another man. I will never forgive her. My feelings for her were progressively drained during the months she confided in and confessed her love to P, rather than approaching me and telling me she was dissatisfied with how things were going between us. I told her that I used to love who she was, but now I loathe who she is, and that if I never see her again, it will be too soon. Here we are, on the sidewalk in Midtown Manhattan, with her causing a commotion and weeping her eyes out. A few individuals strolled by, throwing sideways glances, but I didn't mind. I didn't want to disgrace her in public. I'd already wrecked her socially and professionally, but I needed to demonstrate my last ounce of affection for her. I concluded by telling her that I had no regrets about being her husband for the previous 23 years. I despised the fact that, after 23 years, she believed that the simplest solution was the best one. And, here's the kicker, I owe this one to the nice kids of __ on Reddit, because it came to me only seconds before I said it. For 23 years, I thought you were mine, but it turns out it was just my turn. Then I inserted my Raycons, turned around and walked away. Later that night, her father contacted me to apologize. He compliments me on always being a nice father to his daughter, admits he is ashamed of her, and claims he raised her better than she did. I won't lie, I'll miss the old man. My father died years ago. Therefore he has always been my default father figure. But after that call, I doubt I'll be able to communicate with anyone in her family. That night, I went on Facebook and symbolically changed my relationship status to divorced. Yay! It's not finished yet, but in my opinion, it is. As previously said, when I post on Facebook it is deemed an event, thus several people contacted me via Messenger with questions. I explained everything, including the fact that I filed for divorce from Sue earlier that day. Of course, Nina called, surprised that I had pulled the trigger so swiftly. Obviously when we spoke, I was already in the process, but she had no idea how far along it was. When I asked her if she could come over, she bolted. We knocked boots again, but this time she stayed the night. We slept in my bed and spoke till early in the morning, and I haven't felt this relieved and connected in a long time. Nina understands me, and I can't get enough of being with her. She's been the only thing on my mind since she confided in me. Yeah, I know some people may think I'm __ up for moving on so quickly, but as far as I'm concerned, my marriage ended the day P let Sue touch his pecker, so I'm ready to go on. So wonderful, that is it, that's the end. My divorce is in the works, and I am starting a relationship with Nina. I know I mentioned in a statement to someone that I'd probably never marry again, but that was before Nina told me about her emotions for me, and I can't deny that I feel the same way now. We're planning to take things slowly and won't make any announcements until Sue's divorce is legal and formal. I don't care what happens to Sue. She could move P into our old house for all I care. I'll receive my house payment in 4 quarterly installments throughout 2021, and aside from the $653 I'll deposit directly into her savings account each month, I'll never see or communicate with her again. I am eternally grateful to everyone who has expressed encouragement, support and gratitude. The soon-to-be ex-wife of 23 years attempted suicide last night. The hits keep coming. I've been sitting here for hours and wasn't sure where to put it, but this sub seemed appropriate. So if you're looking for some backstory, check out my post history. I'm not sure how the connection to other subscribers works here, but my previous 2 entries are shown in my profile. Here's a quick version. I found out that my wife of 23 years, 45F, was having an affair with a 27-year-old coworker. We have 2 sons, aged 22 and 17. I created a plan to severely disrupt her life, with the goal of convincing her that I was having an affair of my own. I continued the ruse for more than 4.5 months while gathering evidence of her infidelity, obtaining divorce papers and planning my exit strategy. Slowly moving my personal belongings from our house to a new apartment, getting a new phone and number, separating my half of our shared income from our joint account, and so on. On December 16, 2020, I gathered all of the evidence of her affair that I had compiled, printed it from beginning to end, filed it in 14 binders, packed 11 in gift-wrapped boxes, and mailed it all to the most important people in her life, as well as her HR department, with an ETA of December 22, 2020. On Christmas Eve, while she slept, I took one of the remaining 3 binders and repeated the process, but this time I glued the divorce notice to the inside cover and placed it on my side of the bed. Mind you, she had her affair there several times, along with my old phone and my lawyer's business card. I shadow ghosted her. Her life fell apart during the next 4 days. Her family had effectively excommunicated her. Her friends, who were uninformed of the affair, shunned her, and my mother reprimanded her, calling her the most vile and derogatory insults you could imagine. Her lover and she were both put on administrative leave and eventually fired. We had our divorce hearing last week and agreed on a formal separation that will result in an uncontested divorce, subject to a few requirements for transitional income because she is still unemployed. I'll pay for the utilities, $653 per month, until she finds a job or until 1 year after the divorce is finalized, which is expected in 3 months. She keeps her home, car, and half of the marital assets. I keep half of the assets, which include my car, motorcycle, boat and vacation house, a cabin in the Poconos. Following the hearing, we had one final conversation in which she attempted to excuse her infidelity and pushed me to give her another chance once the divorce was finalized. Of course, I said no, told her some harsh words, and walked away forever. This brings us to last night. Only my closest friends, 2 boys, elder sister and mother have my new contact information, and I have completely blocked my soon-to-be ex-wife from all social media platforms. She has no way to reach me since I left her on Christmas Eve, but several of our mutual acquaintances do. Last night, I was sitting at my apartment when I received a voice call notification on Messenger from one of those friends. She was one of the only people who didn't forsake Sue after the affair was uncovered. She did not waste time responding to my message. She informed me that she had gone to check on Sue, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and discovered her passed out in the bedroom, foaming at the mouth with 2 empty pill bottles beside her. Sue was in the intensive care unit, in critical but stable condition, and the doctor anticipated she'd recover. Sue had pleaded with me to come, and her parents and 2 sisters were also hospitalized. My guess is that they were notified after the hospital attempted to tell me, but Sue was still using my old phone number as her emergency contact. I merely told her friend, no. Sue is no longer my problem. And that she had clearly decided to take the easy way out rather than face the sorrow and misery of ending her 23-year marriage. I then told her friend that if Sue's family was present, they could help her pick up the pieces, but as far as I'm concerned, there is no Sue and I anymore. I ended the call. I slept on it for a few hours, and my sons called me this morning to find out what occurred. I answered yes, and I told them both that if they wanted to be there to support their mother, I wouldn't judge them for it. She is their mother after all. But I made it clear that I no longer cared what she did with or to herself. They were both taken aback by this, but they acknowledged my position. However, now that the news of her suicide attempt has spread, many of those who abandoned her are coming forward and telling me that I need to be there for her. That regardless of what she did to me, I should assist her in her time of need. I also discovered that her affair partner tried to pay her a visit this morning but was denied permission because he is not a family member. I am being pressed to go see her, but I no longer care about her. I haven't for a long time. I emotionally checked out during the process of collecting my revenge for her betrayal, and I still don't care what happened. Actually, it makes me dislike her even more. She is the one who was unfaithful. She is the one who, after a nearly year-long affair with a man barely 5 years older than our oldest child, decided it was worth jeopardizing 23 years of marriage. And now that she has to face the consequences of her actions, she adopts the most selfish approach. Even though she is expected to survive, she has managed to evoke quick sympathy from people who condemned her weeks ago. Meanwhile, I'm portrayed as the angry ex-husband who refuses to sympathize with her, at least by the bulk of her family. Her father, on the other hand, called me and supported my decision to stay away. I feel as if I never truly knew this woman. After 23 years, it has finally happened. Yes, I get that the way I ended things with her may have left her in a horrible emotional condition, but a whole new bag of worms has opened. Either she had a catastrophic mental breakdown and tried suicide, or she engaged in an extremely risky and deliberate ploy to regain favor with individuals who had only weeks before scolded her for abandoning me. She cheated on me and is now the victim? Sorry if this comes out as a rant, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. I want to be clear. I'm not going to visit Sue. She waived her right to my concern for her well-being the day she permitted P, my personal nickname for her partner, to touch her. This may come across as cruel, but despite my cool, calm and collected exterior throughout the event, my emotions remain raw. But I do not care about this woman. I haven't in a very long time. I am aware that I will be despised by a number of people here, but I do not mind. Think of me any way you choose. If you were in my position, you would interpret her actions very differently. Some of you will search through my post history to see what I did to her. You're going to infer that her suicide attempt was my fault. That tricking her into thinking I was cheating on her when she was actually cheating on me, and then destroying her socially and professionally, was the catalyst for her breakdown. Maybe it was. Maybe I am a callous sociopath. However, as Arthur Fleck famously said, you get what you quite deserve. I devoted half of my life to this woman, doing all in my ability to be the finest husband possible. She admitted that I had no influence over her decision to leave our marriage. She did it for herself. Her selfishness knows no bounds, and I'm relieved to be free of her. If that makes me a bad person because I refuse to visit her and never intend to engage with her again, so be it. I stick to my beliefs. She decided to deceive me. She decided to prioritize her needs over our marriage. So now it's my turn to prioritize myself above all else. I don't mind if she perishes in the depths of hell. Allow people to help her self-improvement. My dedication to her well-being ended when we signed the separation agreement. I simply needed to get this off my chest. If you're going to judge me for how I feel, save it. As I have indicated, despite 23 years and 2 children, I never fully knew this woman. I have no sympathy for her, and never will. Sue's father informed me that she had been transferred from the ICU to the mental health ward. The doctors are still keeping track of her mental health. She is alert and intelligent again, but definitely sleepy. Her father told me she asked if I might come to see her, but he declined. She turned off after that. He gently remarked that he would only provide additional information if I questioned, as he was aware of my mental state. I've also scheduled counseling for my son, who is 17 years old. His first consultation is this coming Monday. Update. The aftermath of my soon-to-be ex-wife's suicide attempt. I'm writing this as a form of therapy, a practical way to convey my ideas. Despite everything I had said in previous blogs and comments, I went to see Sue. She's been out of the hospital for 4 days, and believe it or not, Nina convinced me to see her. Nina explained that the only way I'd be able to let go of my dislike for Sue was to see her one more time in her fragile state. So about 6 p.m., I called Sue for the first time since serving her. Her greeting was not the happy and effervescent one I had grown accustomed to during the previous 2 decades. Her voice seemed harsh and faint. When she heard my voice, she burst into tears. It took her nearly 3 minutes to gather her composure and speak again. Before she could say anything, I told her I'd be there by 8 p.m., and she agreed. My prior home is around an hour to an hour and a half away from Co-op City, where I currently live. I grabbed a bite to eat at the neighborhood pizza and left. I arrived at 7:47 p.m., and she was already at the door when I drove into the driveway. As I neared, I realized the toll her actions had taken on her. She appeared noticeably thinner, the unhealthy kind of emaciated. Overall, she resembled the walking dead. The first thing she tried to do was come in for a hug, but I stopped her. She understood I wasn't there to console her and quickly backed off. We went inside and sat in the living room. Sue almost immediately told me that she wanted to be transparent about everything. She told me she couldn't live with her guilt over what she'd done to me and the boys. She entered a downward spiral of shame and misery after we signed the separation agreement, culminating in her suicide attempt. Her friend, who contacted me from the hospital, saw her behavior and started coming over to check on her. She stated that the doctors told her that if she hadn't been discovered 1 hour earlier, she would have survived. She stated that she had failed me as a wife. That falling for P was a mistake and that she had not backed out when she knew she was in too deep. She also apologized for sharing so much personal information about our marriage and speaking ill of me to him. She confessed she never imagined herself capable of doing such a thing. But she was. She thought she was doing the right thing, but when she discovered I was cheating, it hit her like a ton of bricks. The sensation of betrayal was intense, and she needed to leave as quickly as possible. However, it was definitely too late. She then asked when I had stopped caring. I told her the night she confronted me with such vehemence about my cheating, despite the fact that she had been sleeping with P for months. I lost all respect for her that night, which fueled my drive to follow out my plan. She told me that when she got up on Christmas morning and saw the gift I had left, she was overjoyed, until she opened it. When she realized what it was and how much I knew, she went wild and hasn't entered our bedroom since. She desperately tried to find out if anyone knew where I was, but when she went to Facebook to ask, she was scolded by friends and family for her actions. She wasn't sure how everyone knew so quickly. That's when I informed her about the remaining binders. Her shocked look was priceless. It dawned on her that I had orchestrated everything she had gone through. Her friends turning on her, her family humiliating her, and yes, even her job loss. It was all my fault. She simply fell silent and turned off after that. When I went to use the bathroom, everything was in disarray. The mirror was broken, her skincare supplies were all over the place, and the tub appeared to have not been cleaned since they took her to the hospital. When I returned to the living room, she put her face in her hands, crying. And truthfully, I felt nothing. There is no more anger, rage or sympathy. They say that apathy is the polar opposite of love, and as I looked at her, I felt exactly that. She looked up at me and murmured, "I messed up everything. I harmed us, and I don't know what to do. I can't do it by myself." I told her she had her family, the person who discovered her, and our sons, but not me. She would never do this again. I told her I came to give her closure after the pain she had put herself through, but as I walked out that door, I never looked back. P showed up shortly after. She informed me that he contacted her 2 days earlier. They spoke for a few hours, and she advised him to move on with his life, meet a younger woman and forget about her. Sue spent the remainder of the conversation apologizing for betraying me and asking, "Is this really the end?" Without hesitation, I looked her in the eyes and said, "Yes." It had ended long before I served the divorce papers on Christmas. I assumed it was my indication to leave. There were no further words exchanged since what else could be said. I left her on the couch, closed the door behind me, got in my car and drove home. It's 2:56 a.m. when I write this. I needed to convey it while it was still fresh in my mind. This concludes the Sue saga. My 17-year-old son and I have both been booked for counseling in the coming weeks. Nina and I are still going strong, sticking to our policy of keeping things quiet until my divorce is official. I'm remaining active and motivated, looking forward to a future with a woman I know will cherish and honor me, as she has for decades. It's time for me to focus on the life ahead of me. So, this is probably my last post for a while. Perhaps I'll publish an update after the divorce is official. Thank you to everyone who has supported me and wished me success. To everyone who cheered my retribution plan, I honestly wish it hadn't happened. But if I had to do it again, I wouldn't change anything, except maybe doing more to P than just firing him. And to the one person who attacked me, claiming I deserved it since I raped my wife, you are insane and, yeah, it's time to get my green ass out of here. Update. Where are things and where are they going? It's been just over 2 months since I served my wife's divorce papers, and a month since my previous update, which I said would most likely be my last. But a lot has transpired since that post, and after returning to this account and seeing hundreds of messages and responses, I decided to share what's going on. Before I continue, I'd like to convey my heartfelt appreciation for all of your compassion and support throughout my journey. I am grateful for all of the affection I've received on Reddit and from my family. First, I'd like to address a matter about which many people have expressed concern. My youngest son, who is 17 years old. He began individual counseling only a few days after my last post. I accompanied him to his first 2 sessions, and he has been going on his own ever since. He attends twice a week and it's really helped him. He is doing okay overall, but his trust in relationships has been completely shattered. The long-term consequences of his own adultery, combined with dealing with his mother's cheating and attempted suicide, have left a deep mark that I feel will take decades to heal. I also realized that his experience was worse than he had previously claimed. He discovered his ex-girlfriend making out with someone he thought was a friend, but who had only approached him to get to her. He never told me about this aspect of his breakup. My heart aches for my son, who has had to go through this at such a crucial point in his growth. You do everything you can to protect your children, but life ultimately says, no. He's decided to stay with IC for the long term, and I've told him that if he ever needs to talk to me about anything, nothing is off limits. Next up is my own IC. If you've read most of my articles, you'll see that I have an anger issue, which is odd given that I've always been a reserved and controlled man. But this entire event has certainly awakened a sleeping dragon in me, and it is a true fire breather. I have talked about everything with my therapist, and I mean everything. When I told him what I did to my ex, he was both amazed and appalled. Not what I had expected. Apparently, when prodded, I exhibit psychopathic tendencies, which is not surprising given what I have done. My sessions are more structured than dramatic, as I process all that is going on in my mind concerning my marriage's dissolution and attempt to achieve balance. Now, for the elephant in the room, Nina. I'm not sure where I would be without this woman. I never anticipated having such a loving, understanding and nurturing woman by my side to support me through this. We are still going strong, and despite our best efforts to keep our relationship quiet, it is very open within our circle. She just understands me, and has since we were teenagers. Because she understands the misery of having the person you've spent your entire life with cheat on you, she does everything she can to help me cope with my emotions. We alternated between staying in her place and mine. Her 5-year-old opposed the concept of living together. My flat is too small for 3 people and my lease is until 2022. So, for the time being, we'll continue to split time. Nina comes to my house when her kid is with her father and I come to hers when she has her daughter. Speaking of her daughter, I admire her and she has taken a liking to me. I wish I could find the words to describe how important Nina has been to me throughout everything. If you haven't read my previous entries, Nina has secretly loved me since we were sophomores in high school, but she was an ugly duckling who believed she had no chance with me. She deliberately sat by and watched me pursue, date and marry my soon-to-be ex-wife Sue, knowing how she felt. She kept this a secret for nearly 25 years, until a week after my divorce hearing, when we met for dinner and she revealed everything. I feel privileged to have her in my life. We are constantly discussing what the future holds for us. We are not getting married since we have both been burned by marriage, but we have discussed having a civil partnership. We'll probably wait a while before heading down that path, but it's evident that we're destined to be together. Finally, there is Sue, the soon-to-be ex-wife. There isn't much to tell. I haven't spoken to her since her attempted suicide. I have no idea what she is doing and don't want to know. I consider her dead. That is pretty much all. Life goes on. It's March 2nd as I type this, so only 1 month till the divorce is final. By this time next month, I'll be a free man, and I'm counting down the days until I can begin the next chapter in my life. To clarify, I made a mistake when I mentioned being clinically diagnosed as a psychopath. My therapist indicated I have sociopathic tendencies when provoked, so I assumed it was a professional diagnosis. It wasn't, it was just his professional observation. Furthermore, my 22-year-old son had no intention of causing harm to P. He expressed what he did out of wrath. Update, the end and farewell. Sue became my ex-wife on April 13th, exactly 1 month ago. My lawyer first told me that it would go through on the 18th, but because of the reduction of COVID cases here in NYC, it was pushed through a few days earlier. My lawyer, Jeff, called me on April 12th and asked me to come see him the next day. When I did, he handed me the finalization notification and shook my hand. I couldn't leave it at that, so I went in, hugged him, and thanked him for everything he had done for me. On the way home, all I could think about was watching mental movies of everything from the preceding 24 years of my life. All the memories. All the history. When I walked into my flat, it happened. When I hit the floor, all of the emotions that had been bottled up inside me came out. I hadn't sobbed like that in years, and it wasn't a sad cry by any means. My spirit felt as if it had been set free from the lowest, darkest depths. My first call that night was at 22. I kept it brief and nice, implying that it was official and that his mother and I were no longer married as of that day. He asked how I was feeling. I'm sure he could hear my voice that I had been crying, and I answered I was okay. Then 17 got on the phone and we talked for almost 90 minutes. 22 and his fiancée have done a fantastic job of caring for him, and he, like me, continues to receive treatment. I won't go into detail about what we discussed, but I will say that there is still a lot of work to be done, especially with his perspective on relationships. Nina came to see me later that night as she often did, and I certainly told her the news. She simply wrapped her arms around my waist and embraced me tightly, and I cried again. Nina reassured me. No matter what, I will never betray you, and I love you with all my heart. I know it is all true. I may face some criticism for saying this, but I do not regret the life I built with Sue. Despite everything, she gave me 2 strong sons. But it is clear today that I chose the wrong woman. Nina has given so much in the previous 4.5 months while asking for almost little in return. She only requests that I be there for her. I don't want to go on about her, but she's my actual hero. There have also been a few unexpected events since the divorce was finalized. For example, P approached me immediately. Yes, he messaged me on Reddit. It turns out he saw the story when it went viral on YouTube and immediately recognized it as about him. Before anyone asks, I will not reveal his Reddit username. I think I've made the kids suffer enough. The first thing he did was apologize for his involvement in all of this. He informed me what the results of the binder I sent to his mother were. Essentially, he has been excommunicated by his family. His mother, as I discovered while plotting my retribution, is a devout Catholic woman, the in church 3 days a week, no mea patria spiritus sancti, type of devout. So her views on marriage are sacrosanct, and learning that her son had recently ended a nearly 25-year marriage sent her into a frenzy. She fired him the same day, and he was fired within a week of his employer receiving the binder I provided. He has been couch surfing and seeking a new job ever since. He claimed he wanted to contact me on social media, all the places he blocked me while screwing Sue, but admits he was afraid because, in his words, if I was able to find him before, I could find him again. I admit that I could have totally devastated this youngster, but I chose not to. I asked when he last saw Sue and he said he hadn't in months. Sue told him to forget about her and go on with his life the last time he spoke with her, much like she told me the last time I spoke with her. So she was not lying about it. I asked the boy some additional questions, and he was surprisingly forthcoming. I assume he was seeking some type of restitution for the havoc he had created himself. Much of what he said was consistent with what I had learnt from the text material I got. I didn't say anything. I just asked, and he responded. The talk went on for around 20 minutes until he apologized again. That's when I hit him with this. Copy and paste the following from the conversation. You're a 27-year-old man who must spend the rest of his life knowing that your own mother despises you for ending a marriage that lasted nearly as long as you've been alive. I understand you messaged me because karma is bugging you, but I will not bring you closure. When I was 27, I was building a legacy. You are currently a homeless, unemployed homewrecker. If you are intelligent, you will gain from this lecture. If you are not, you will be a disaster until you reach my age, assuming you live that long. I wish you luck, but you don't need it. You should get your act together. I completed our talk and blocked him. Clearly, this was not the kind of closure he was looking for. And I could have been much more harsh, but I believe those statements are enough to haunt him. The next significant event is Nina's transition into Mrs. Frog on May 4, 2021. Over the last 2 months, we've had extensive discussions about where we want to go. Nina made it abundantly clear that she has no intention of ever being with anyone other than me, and she desires my namesake. She wants to be my wife and has asked me to adopt Anna, her daughter. I've said it before, I adore this kid. She's 6 years old now, her birthday was last month, and she idolizes me. I am the first father figure she has known since her biological father abandoned her when she was 4. Nina has made it a point not to introduce Anna to any man she has been involved with unless they have made a long-term commitment. Needless to say, I have perseverance and experience raising children. Anna and 17 complement each other perfectly. The big brother-little sister dynamic between them is both lovely and sweet. 17 has formed a deep bond to Anna and appreciates it. I told my therapist about it, and he said that's a positive sign. 17 sees the innocence he wishes to preserve in Anna, despite the fact that his own innocence has been shattered. So last Monday, we decided to go to City Hall and pull the trigger. It took 24 hours to receive the marriage license, and the outcome was the most unremarkable ever envisioned. I addressed it as if no one had seen it coming, and Big Sis said, "Now placing bets on when the now expecting post goes up." We thought we were keeping our relationship a secret for months, but practically everyone figured it out. So great. That was hilarious. Some might believe it was too soon, and I've mentioned in earlier remarks that I will never marry again. However, this occurred before Nina and I developed a meaningful relationship. This woman has declared her undying and unconditional love for me. She has cried in my arms, telling me how happy she is and how she never thought she'd be able to be with me. She's gone into great detail about her feelings for me throughout the last 25 years, and how even while married, she mourned the idea that Sue won. I had no idea how deep that rabbit hole was. She even said that she had pondered having an affair with me, but she was never that type of person. Even still, throughout all the years I've known her, she's given me so much while expecting so little in return. Even the woman I married and had 2 children with has never shown me as much affection as Nina does. I'd be silly not to tell her my name. So now she has it, and we are beginning the paperwork for me to adopt Anna. Finally, there's Sue. I haven't spoken with her since my last visit to our marital home 4 months ago, although mutual friends, the ones who remain, send me updates on a daily basis. I learnt from one of those acquaintances, a realtor, that she sold the house and was recruited as a clerical assistant at his company. In doing so, he canceled the assistance payments I was required to make due to her unemployment. She currently lives in a little apartment near his office, which he also helped build. She is still functional, but she is a shadow of the woman she once was. She has acquired little weight and keeps to herself. She comes in, does her work, and rarely interacts with anyone other than him. Most likely since her work-related socializing is where it all started. The last time I heard from her was at the end of March, when I thanked him for watching out for her but advised him that I didn't need any further information. She's no longer my problem. I'm almost certain she knows about Nina and myself, as numerous of our surviving common friends have mentioned us. With 17 just a year away from becoming a legal adult, I have no need to speak with her again, and I won't. And that's it. My journey through betrayal, vengeance, attempted suicide, and mental pain is complete. I'll answer questions and leave a few remarks, but after that, I'm returning to the swamp to live with my new frog bride and her tiny tadpole. Thank you to the thousands of people who have offered me advice, best wishes and compliments during this process. The opportunity to tell my story and help others dealing with the pain of infidelity has humbled and blessed me. I enjoy the new friends I've met on Reddit. I never imagined meeting such attractive people in a place where blatantly negative things might be spoken. Keep it green and pleasant. Reddit. Now to the next story, Story 3. After years of enduring condescending remarks, I finally told my father's infantilizing friend that I hated him. Original post August 10, 2023. Years ago, my dad met Harold through mutual friends, and they hit it off. I was 18 and in college when I met him, and we never had a close relationship. However, he always seemed to think of himself as a family friend and was extremely infantilizing and condescending towards me. Every time I saw him, I'd try to tell myself it wasn't that bad, only for him to prove me wrong less than a minute later. Harold would disrespect my boundaries, say things like, "You're not 19, you're a baby," while I was talking to other people, and patronize me, my education or my hobbies whenever he had the chance. He always noticed that annoyed me, to which he'd playfully ask if I hated him. I always said no, but only for my father's sake. The final straw came the day Harold interrupted a barbecue to say, "I really like you, even though you're an impolite brat." I was 20 years old. I'd been quiet all day, working on a paper during the barbecue, but replied patiently and politely whenever anyone addressed me. And even if that hadn't been the case, I knew he didn't have the right to talk to me like that. After that, I started making an effort to avoid any events I knew he'd be attending. Yesterday was my father's girlfriend's birthday. They threw a small lunch party at my dad's apartment. I went there with my fiancée and our 6-month-old son. Harold was there. I hadn't seen him in months, but he still talked to me as if I was a dumb child. Never mind that I'm engaged, a mother and 26 years old. I spent the whole party ignoring his helpful advice about me being too young to get married or be a mom. It helped that most of the other guests seemed to disagree with him. My baby spent most of the afternoon sleeping. There's a bassinet in my old room. He woke up hungry, so I went to breastfeed him and excused myself from the party for a while. I got back to jokes and comments, all from Harold, about how I was probably struggling if my son was managing to leech me away for so long. He went on to interrupt a conversation I was having with another of my dad's friends to question pretty much everything about my parenting. He doesn't even have custody of his daughter, by the way. And to make more comments about my age. I decided I couldn't take it anymore after he asked if I'd thought about giving my baby up for adoption. I got my son and told my fiancée we were leaving. We said goodbye to everyone except Harold. When we got to the door, Harold came to ask why we were leaving. I tried to make up an excuse, but he kept trying to make us stay. After a small back and forth, he jokingly asked if I hated him. And this time I said, "Yes, I do. Can we go now?" He didn't say anything and we left. On the way home, my fiancé said he was proud of me. My father called this morning to say the opposite, and we had a small fight, but ultimately decided to drop the subject. I'm sure this isn't over, but if it keeps going, it won't be because of me. This is far from my proudest moment and a small part of me regrets it, but I'm done with that guy. Edit. Jesus Christ superstar, that's a lot of comments. To answer some common questions, I don't think Harold is in love with me. Harold didn't tell me to give up my son. He asked if I'd thought of doing so when I got pregnant. It was still an awful question, especially since he interrupted a conversation I was having with someone else, my dad's girlfriend's pregnant friend, who was asking about my own pregnancy and delivery, to ask it. I don't like making a big deal out of things unless necessary. If I'm uncomfortable, I leave. If I don't like someone, I avoid them. It's usually less stressful. The fight between me and my father ended when I told him about the adoption comment. I don't think he gets that's not the only reason I left, but it was definitely what broke the camel's back. I really don't need my father to stop being friends with Harold. He's a grown man capable of making his own crappy decisions. I never told my dad I hated Harold because I never thought I had to like him in the first place. He's my father's friend, not mine. And I've been distancing myself from Harold since I was 20, meaning I haven't seen him much in the last 6 years. My fiancé was on the other side of the room and wasn't listening to Harold's comments. I filled him in when we got to the car. He's 100% on my side. Update August 18, 2023. Hey guys. I wasn't going to write an update, but I just got some free time and I figured I'd fill you in. I'll start by addressing the very frequent assumption that Harold has feelings for me. I really don't think that's the case. His comments always came out as annoying and condescending, but never sexual. But I will say that your comments scared the shit out of me. And the fact that the general consensus was "fuck Harold" was weirdly heartwarming. I also want to add that, while I did regret what I said a little bit, I never doubted I'd done the right thing. I think most of my regret came from the fact that my 8 years of keeping the peace were over. It took some time for the relief to sink in. Truth be told, I've been wanting to do this since the barbecue incident, which was when I went from "I don't like that guy" to "I can't stand that guy." My father called Harold the day after I made my previous post. When confronted about the adoption comment, he tried to twist it as him being genuinely concerned about me being a mom so soon, and that he didn't think I knew what I was doing. He did apologize to my father. I don't buy any of that. The next day, my dad told me about the call. He said I should forgive Harold for what he thought was an honest misunderstanding. He also told me I should apologize too, since I'd overreacted by telling Harold I hated him for such a small reason. Many of Harold's past comments were made with my father close by. It often happened in the middle of conversations with other people, so he'd be too distracted to register them. He also wouldn't notice them most of the time. My dad doesn't pay enough attention to anything that doesn't either concern or anger him, and he'll most likely forget it until he gets angry at something else later anyway. He's like a meth-head goldfish. We also have different definitions of what's offensive, so he'd never think they were a big deal. I told my father I wasn't exaggerating when I said I hated Harold, and that the adoption comment was far from being the only reason. I listed most of the condescending treatment and comments I could remember, including the ones from the party. He didn't remember any of them. I made it very clear that I'd hated Harold for years prior to the party, and that I had nothing to apologize for. I then stated that I'm no longer coming to any events Harold is invited to. My father doesn't need to stop being friends with him, or even stop inviting him to stuff, but he can no longer expect me to show up as well. I will ask him beforehand, and if he lies, I'll leave. My father called me dramatic, but I pointed out that I've been avoiding Harold for 6 years now and no one even noticed, so it clearly wasn't a problem. I've only seen him a handful of times since the barbecue incident, and only twice for more than a few minutes, the lunch party last week and another party back when I was pregnant. It clearly didn't ruin my father's life. I'm not obliged to like his friends any more than he is to like mine. There was some back and forth, but he agreed to my terms. We spoke yesterday about something else, and he mentioned Harold was upset. I ignored that. I'm not going NC with my father. Yes, I'm very well aware he's an asshole, and I came really close to cutting ties with him in the last few years, but I ultimately decided it wouldn't really fix anything. Maintaining my relationship with him has gotten a lot easier since I moved out, as we only see each other a couple times a month. He gets frustrated that I don't call or text much, but doesn't complain about it anymore. I don't see the point in going NC with someone who no longer has any say in how I live my life. I'd rather just take note of what my father did wrong when I was growing up and then make sure to raise my own kid differently. He's on thin ice though, and has been for some time. He's not allowed to babysit, mostly because I don't trust him to spend more than an hour alone with a baby without falling asleep on the couch. I began pushing for him to start doing therapy back when I got pregnant, and he finally got started back in June. His behavior around me and my younger sister, who still lives between our very divorced parents, has improved a lot since, and I've made it clear to him that he won't be allowed near my son if he stops attending. This is the first time in my life my father has improved his behavior. It's hard to be hopeful, but I'm trying. And if I ever do go NC with my father, it won't be because of fucking Harold. So that's it. Overall, I'm glad I don't have to deceive anyone anymore. My relationship with my father is rocky, but I won't dwell on it. My main responsibilities are my son, my fiancé and my job, and that's not changing anytime soon. And to those who mentioned Jesus Christ Superstar and Blue Oyster Cult in my last post, has anyone told you you're fucking awesome today? Because you are. New update, a shortish. Harold update September 11th, 2024. Hey guys. Wow, I can't believe it's been over a year since I last posted about this. I planned on updating some time ago. These past few months, I've been caught up in raising a toddler, getting married, yay, working like crazy and rewatching Supernatural. Needless to say, I've been busy. Openly avoiding Harold has been working pretty well. My father has been respecting my boundaries. Whenever he invites me and my husband over for lunch or dinner, I ask who else will be there. If Harold's coming, he tells me. He hasn't lied so far, and doesn't usually insist when I tell him I'm not coming. Since my last post, I've only seen Harold once, at my dad's birthday party a few months ago. Yes, I knew he'd be there. My father promised he'd tell him not to talk to me. Also, some of my father's friends' kids, most of whom I used to babysit, would be there. I hadn't seen them in a while, and I love them more than I hate Harold. I ended up spending most of the party with my son and the kids. Harold didn't talk to me at all, so I guess my father was true to his word. My husband and I did catch him staring at us a couple times, but I decided to ignore it. I caught my husband staring back once, and the walking marshmallow I married actually managed to look threatening. I love this man. You know who did talk to me? Harold's girlfriend. Yes, he has one now. She interacted with me twice. First, she came over to coo over my son before making a comment about how he needed a haircut. Ha ha ha, I already hate you. Later, she approached me and said, "You're shy, aren't you?" I said no. She laughed and said, "Yeah, you're shy." She said all that in the same tone one would use to talk to a 6-year-old. I managed to keep my expression schooled. Otherwise, I would have told her I'm not shy. I just chose to spend the whole party with the kids because they were better company than her and her annoying-ass boyfriend. So yeah, based on both my interactions with her, Harold's girlfriend is insufferable. In other words, they're perfect for each other. I don't have much else to add. My father broke up with the woman he was dating last year, long fucking story, and has a new girlfriend. She is not annoying or psychotic, and I actually really like her. They won't last a year. My relationship with my father is still not perfect, by the way, but it has improved. He's actually started apologizing to me a lot more often. I don't know whether it's the therapy or the fact that motherhood has apparently made me terrifying, but I'll take it. And I'll give credit where it's due. He's a very good grandfather. I'm also glad my father is respecting this Harold boundary. I very much don't want this man in my life. Honestly, I'm pretty satisfied right now. My little boy is thriving. Part of me really misses the baby times, but I grow prouder and prouder every day. Getting to know my kid has been fantastic. Now, on to the next story, story 4. I just found out that my wife has been cheating on me with multiple partners for the past 2 years. Original post, August 3, 2024. I'm in shock and I really need some advice right now. Me, 40M, and my wife, 37F, have been married for 10 years, and we recently celebrated our anniversary. We have 2 wonderful kids together. Since the beginning of the year, things have been off between us. She's been acting strangely since the beginning of the year, irritable, avoiding me, and we haven't been intimate much. Some days she's happy, some others fully irritated. Sometimes she's a great mother to our kids. Some other times she wishes they had never been born. Recently, I had to go to the urologist for a urinary tract infection, and the test suggested it might be an STD. This was a huge shock because I've never been with anyone other than my wife since we started dating. Right now, she's away at a so-called business seminar, of which I talked about in a different post. She has been keeping diaries for over a decade, and out of desperation, I read them for the first time ever. It turns out she's been having multiple sexual partners for the past 2 years. In particular, there was one affair that lasted over a year, and it seems part of her irritability was due to her lover moving on to someone else. I also discovered she has a hidden Tinder account too and has been meeting with other men regularly. I am devastated beyond words. I feel lost and unsure of what to do, especially since we have 2 little kids who mean the world to me. I need some advice on how to handle this situation. Should I confront her immediately? Should I consult a lawyer first? How do I even begin to process this betrayal and protect my kids through all of this? Thank you for any guidance you can offer in this incredibly difficult time. Additional information from OOP. Thank you for all the comments. As everyone's suggesting, I'll try to consult discreetly with a lawyer ASAP, gather as much evidence as I can, get the STD treated, and as painful as it is, perform paternity tests on my kids. To be honest, I'm a complete mess right now and cannot think properly. All kinds of thoughts are crossing my mind. Part of me still loves her and wants to forgive her, the other is just full of disgust and hatred, and wishes I've never even met her at all. I wish I could just disappear right now. Comments. Commenter 1. Copies of evidence to lawyer. Go full NC, server. Don't drink, work out. Good luck. Commenter 2. Get proof, get a lawyer, do what the lawyer says. Commenter 3. Assuming an open marriage has no appeal to you, take a deep breath and start lifting weights and eating right. These will help you process the emotions in a healthy way instead of drowning in the bottle. Don't say anything to her. Document all evidence. Talk a lawyer first before making any moves. It's probably been happening your entire marriage. Get paternity tests on your kids. Suggest 23andMe as something fun. Plan your next move and execute on it like a divine masculine. Treat the divorce and custody battle like a business negotiation. Keep emotions low. Remember, this is going to be extremely traumatizing to your children. Keep their mental health at the forefront always. Do not talk badly about your wife. If she tries to destroy your relationship with them or lay the blame at your feet, just stay calm. Tell them you love them and this is between her and you, but you both love them very much and it's nothing they did. Don't tell them about your wife's indiscretions until they're old enough to handle it, if ever. Update, September 11, 2024, 1 month later. Thank you all for your invaluable advice and support. It has been a tremendous help during this difficult time. After my last post, my in-laws kindly offered to look after the kids while my wife was away at her seminar. They remain unaware of the turmoil I've been experiencing. I used this time to go through her diaries and take pictures of their contents. Each entry felt like a stab in the back, leaving me in a state of shock and disbelief. I just don't recognize anymore the person I thought I knew and loved for over a decade. To avoid going into too much detail, the revelations in the diaries would make any movie or TV series I've ever seen pale in comparison. She has been involved with at least 6 different men over the past 2 years. These affairs occurred not only during her so-called seminars but also during short business trips, dinners and other supposed work-related events. Meanwhile, I was at home, taking care of the kids and naively believing I was supporting her career. Some entries vividly describe how great these encounters were for her, all while expressing gratitude towards me for being a devoted husband and father, without a single trace of remorse. This lack of guilt and the extent of her deception make me question her emotional and mental state. While reading through the diaries, I felt an overwhelming sense of despair and was seriously contemplating suicide. In the end, I sought refuge with friends for a few days, as I felt I couldn't be alone, otherwise I'd do something that could never be taken back. They really supported me a lot during this time and helped me get in contact with a therapist. I'm now taking regular therapy sessions once per week. They also help me in getting in touch with lawyers specializing in divorce. I'm also getting treatment for my STD as well. Returning home after picking up the kids from my in-laws was an emotionally devastating experience. I couldn't bring myself to smile at all. At some point, while contemplating all the possible ways I could end my life, my daughter just looked at me and saw my face. Without saying a word, she just came over and wrapped her arms around me. At that moment I broke down, held her tightly and burst into tears in front of her. She's my sweet angel, and the shame of having considered leaving my kids to suffer under their mother's disdain was almost too much to bear. For the first few weeks after finding out, I could barely sleep at all and had to depend on sleeping pills just to get through the nights. My motivation was at an all-time low, affecting both my home life and my work. I forced myself to continue exercising, and found out it was the only thing that actually made me feel better during this time. To whoever said in the previous post that I shouldn't give up on doing exercise, thank you, you may have just saved my life. The stress intensified after my wife returned from her trip. Initially, it took all my energy to hide my disgust at her and the knowledge I had gained about her actions. I've somewhat got used to this now, but it remains emotionally draining. She did notice that something was off, but still appears to believe that I am entirely unaware of what has transpired. Her lack of shame is staggering. Just recently, she asked me to buy her the expensive gift I promised her for our 10-year anniversary, for which I made an excuse to not buy yet, despite her going into another business trip just the day after our anniversary, which was described in extremely painful detail in her diaries. To make matters worse, she was even arranging to meet her latest partner on the day of my birthday. Nowadays I've started to feel a lot better, thanks to exercise and therapy. I had never been to a therapist before in my life, and to be honest, I am regretting not having done it sooner. Despite my wife betraying me in the worst possible way, part of me still thought that maybe all of this was my fault. Maybe if I had done this. If I had put more effort into that. I blamed myself for a lot of things. My therapist helped me see through it that, while I could have done some things differently, in the end, I cannot be held responsible for the actions she chose to take, and no one deserves to be betrayed in the way I was. If I'm at fault for anything, it's for blaming myself for everything, always putting her needs ahead of my own, and trusting her unconditionally without question. While it was extremely hard for me to balance work and looking after the kids alone every time she went on any of these trips, I always let her go after convincing myself that I was doing it for her, to support her business, to let her relieve stress from being at home. That this is what a supportive husband would do. And that if maybe I had a better job or made her happier, she wouldn't feel the need to escape from home. I'd be lying if I said I'm not depressed anymore, but I'm certainly doing much better these days. Nowadays, I feel more rage rather than sadness, and it is the rage that's keeping me going. My therapist advised me to channel this rage into the things I do, which has worked surprisingly well. I talked with 2 law firms about my situation, and was advised to collect more evidence, which I've been devoting myself to for the past few weeks. I've finished digitizing all of her diaries from the past 2 years, which were quite a lot. I got access to her computer and found just way too many photos, chat conversations and documents to help my case. She's been posting all of her adventures into a very distorted private group in Facebook, to which I've also taken plenty of screenshots of. I've compiled a list of all of her sexual partners in the diaries, and have been identifying them one by one on social media, etc. I've gathered everything I could on her current sexual partners, and managed to figure out where they live and/or work. Now I'm debating whether I should confront them or not. The things I've read in these diaries are so bizarre that I thought maybe she was just writing material for some sort of twisted novel, that is, until I found all the other stuff in her computer, etc. Maybe I'm broken myself as well, but a part of me is actually enjoying this process of gathering all these tiny pieces of evidence and information, cross-referencing them with her diaries and finding everything I can about her and her lovers. Part of me wants to see her burn on social media by posting directly everything I've found out, since a big part of her business is centered around social media, but I'm refraining myself from doing so since this would also affect both me and the kids, as well as her parents, who have been nothing but kind to me since we got married. I'm also not sure if I should bring this to light to her parents as well, since this will probably devastate them. I'm planning on confronting her after talking further with the lawyers about how to make sure to gain custody of my kids. The country I live in has a rather unfair tendency of granting custody to the mother, even if she's unfit for it. Setting the terms of the divorce and child support. In any case, thank you all for the advice. A few weeks ago I was in full despair and had no idea what to do nor how to approach the situation. Nowadays, I feel that little by little I'm digging myself out of this hole I've been thrown into. Sorry if I don't respond to all your comments. Right now my full attention is devoted to protecting my kids. Commenter 1. Well, let's hope you talk to your lawyer again soon. I'm not sure why you need more evidence, but you have plenty now. Have her serve in public. Heck, even at a seminar she is supposedly at. Commenter 2. Don't confront. Don't let her know a damn thing until you have all of your ducks in a row. Don't post anything on social media. Don't confront any of her lovers. Just keep doing what you're doing. Let her find out when she's served. Commenter 3. What an absolute piece of shit your wife is. Document and keep gathering information to do everything you can to get full custody of your children. Do it for them. They'll grow up and come to understand that their mother is a mentally ill whore that destroyed their family. Keep going to therapy and see a psychiatrist and get on medication if they deem it needed. You need to keep your nerve and a level head as you go through this. Meanwhile, look up Grey Rock and 180. Now to the next story 5. Neighbor's shed encroaches on our property, stalling house plans for over a year. How can I finally get it removed after battling him for so long? Original post July 3, 2024. My dad owns a vacant but desirable property in NY, neither of us currently reside there. He is passing the property along to me so I can build a house to live there. The property has been in my family since 1937. It took about $10K for him to get the title cleaned up with a lawyer. Last spring I had a survey done that showed the neighbor's shed encroaches on the property by about 7. Setback is 12, so needs to move around 19 back. The neighbor even said to my surveyor that my dad should just sell him the land. With this encroachment my dad is unable to pass along a clean title to me, and without a clean title I'm not able to secure a home building loan. I was going to work with the neighbor to amicably remove the shed, but he swiftly blocked my number and didn't answer his door when I was in town last August. I looked into the town codes and the penalty for the violation is $100 a week. He also does not have a permit for this shed, which is necessary per the town's code of any structure over 120 square feet requiring a permit. Since I didn't live there I got the city involved. The building inspector told him to remove the shed from our property. Neighbor ignored and refused for about 5 months. Then the building inspector had the city attorney write him a letter in January giving him 60 days to respond. The inspector has not given us a copy of the letter. We've requested it multiple times now, so I'm unsure of what all was said in the letter. I've also requested that the inspector enforce the penalties as well as an injunction to padlock his shed for further use. Those requests were ignored as well. We didn't hear back for about 90 days from the neighbor after the attorney's letter, but he agreed to move the shed. Woohoo, right? He then said we need to get surveyors to pin where he should move his shed so he doesn't have to do it twice. We have 3 different surveys of the property, and there are pins at each corner. I called our surveyor and it would be $700 to mark where he should move the shed. I felt that I shouldn't be responsible for getting his shed into compliance. This is his violation and I've been patiently waiting and delaying an entire year. I don't care if he isn't within the full means of the 12 setback, he just needs it off my property to appease me at this point. Initially I was willing to get the surveyor out again and pay for it. But my concern is that if we do that he's still not going to move it in a timely manner and keep moving the goalposts for us. Neighbor even said it would take 5 months after we pin the property. I don't know why he thinks it will take 5 months to move the shed. I called around and got a quote from shed movers. One said they could do it next week for $575. I've got a lawyer in my back pocket who will be my last-ditch effort. It's expensive. A letter alone will be $1,500, and will take a long time, so I don't love that idea. He said we could do a revocable license for the bit of land, but I'm not giving the neighbor anything at this point. I want to put a driveway and definitely a fence there now too, so I'll need that land. At this point I understand why my neighbor is being a jerk. He wants to get away with whatever he can. But I can't understand why the building inspector is letting him get away with everything. Why no penalties? Why no injunctions? He was very unhappy when I called the town clerk and asked for more information because the inspector doesn't answer mine. He's been so ineffective on this and it's having real repercussions for us. We're renting in an HCOL area that we don't like and would love to have made progress this year to move ASAP. The neighbor should have racked up at least $4,400 in penalties so far, and an additional $2K for the 5 months he wants to tack on. I feel like that would invoke actual pressure for him to move it, right? So what is my next step here to get this done ASAP? Is there someone above the inspector with the city that can help me with this? How can I get the town to actually enforce the movement of this shed and its penalties without being such wet noodles about it? Any ideas? Relevant comments. Turk Gonzo, 75. This is brutal. Once this is all settled and your house is done, you're going to have to live next door to that asshole. OOP, IKR. We're budgeting for a very big fence and floodlights. SLP 1965. Does this neighbor have connections with the government? Is it a good old boy kind of place? Seems so fishy. OOP. You're not the first one to ask this exact same question with the same phrasing. I don't believe so. I think the inspector is just ineffective, but who knows? Commenter, it's on your family's property. I'd burn it down. OOP, yeah, trust me. We've thought about that a million times. Editor's note. OOP rehashes the OG post, editing that part out. So yeah. Everyone wants me to burn this shed down, bulldoze it, see it on the property line, or just move it myself. This is in a small town in NY. I don't want to cause waves with neighbors and I need the building inspector to not hate me when I build my house. I'm not going to destroy his property, but I'm interested in moving it myself. Is it legal for me to do that since he's been given so many notices and the town has ordered it to be moved? If I give him a notice, is that enough, or do we need to have an attorney write a letter? My concern is that our neighbor seems like he's got money to mess with us and I don't want any repercussions falling on my dad. I'm afraid he'd sue for some kind of damages or trespassing or something. IDK, he's a jerk. Could we be held liable for this even if we give warning? What are my actual options here and how to go about this with the lowest risk of repercussions? Update September 11th, 2024. So a few weeks back I went to Home Depot and we bought a Sawzall. We went to the neighbor's property in the middle of the night and, nah, not really. For all you burn it downers and Sawzall it sayers, my attorney said by no means do anything like that. He said do not touch it, in any way, ever. So thank you to everyone for the solid and rational advice of talking to attorneys and, as frustrating as it is, utilizing our government resources as recounted below. So I escalated this with the town and bothered them to no end. I got all the way up to the town supervisor and he was very frustrated on my behalf. I told him I've been dealing with this situation for a year, that the neighbor has been told to move the shed by the inspector and town attorney, that I've already had 3 surveys of the land to prove the encroachment, and that the property is properly demarcated with pins. He asked why the building inspector was having yet another surveyor go out there and said he would just have someone measure where the shed needs to be moved using the survey. He says he will personally get involved in this and will give the neighbor 1 week to get his shed moved. I get a call back with him later that day with a junior building inspector, taking direction from the senior inspector while he's out of town. On the line and womp womp, he totally changes his tune. He said I have to get a surveyor to go out there to pin the property line again, but specifically next to the shed. They could never answer me why it was my responsibility to pin a specific spot on my property for a shed that shouldn't exist there in the first place, solely for the benefit of the neighbor figuring out how far back to move his shed to get it into compliance. I'm fuming now, and I also figured out that the senior inspector forgot that I had sent him the third survey showing the encroachment in the spring, which should have begun the penalty violations. He also didn't provide that to the neighbor who needed it and had been asking for it. He just thought I didn't provide the survey. Even the junior inspector was embarrassed and frustrated for his lack of help and thoroughness with my case. At this point, I'm still adamant that I don't want to get another surveyor out there. It will just take too long. I talked to a lawyer that would be less expensive than a surveyor and pretty much said this was a slam dunk win that would enforce the removal ASAP. We're still trying to tread lightly though, so we don't piss off my future home's building inspector too much with the threats of using an attorney, but we desperately need results. My dad's an engineer and comes up with an idea that we present to the junior inspector. We'll use the shed as the property line pin to mark the setback for the neighbor. The shed is shown on the survey and we can see where the property line crosses through the shed, so we just need to measure and mark those places IRL. It's stupidly simple and similar to an idea I mentioned months ago about measuring the setback from the shed, but they approved it. I used the survey's CAD files to set up the measurements for where to pin the property line and 6 setback lines. In my last post, the setbacks were at 12, but changed at some point that month. Another piece of important information that the building inspector forgot to mention to me. When my dad and husband went out to go mark the shed using line of sight, they met up with the neighbor and he was so unbelievably nice. Mind you, we've all been blocked, ignored, had our no trespassing signs taken down, and been told in the past that we should just sell him the property. Now he's making friends with my husband, giving him a tour of his house, talking Scotch, sharing contractor info with him, etc. I'm baffled hearing this and don't trust it but welcome it for the moment. Then my husband tells me the neighbor's wife is rude to him and pissed that we didn't get the additional survey, didn't like that we were doing it this way, etc. The neighbor hushes her and she goes off to pout the rest of the day. My theory is that maybe the wife is the one doing all the blocking and snagging this up. The neighbor apparently had a heart attack earlier this year, so I wonder if she took over his communications. When this first started last year, they mentioned that they tried to buy our property so their son could live on it. Apparently it's just her son, his stepson. I think she drove some of this conflict and he may be giving it up or just changing his tune after his heart attack. Ever since then he's been friendly toward us, which I'm relieved about. So after the pinning of the property line and marking the 6 setback, the building inspector approved our work and then gave the neighbor another month to get this scheduled with a mover and finally moved. After about a month and a half I didn't hear from the inspector, so we gave the town a call. It had been moved. We went forward with our final survey to confirm that our land is clear of encroachments. It's cleared, but the neighbor only moved it 3.6 off the property line, short of the 6 setback. WTAF? I got a letter today from the building inspector saying he passed it and the case is officially closed. I absolutely do not care that it's only 3.6 back instead of 6. I'm just glad he's off my land and can now move forward. But seriously? I don't know how this got approved, but I'm in awe of the incompetence of the inspector. I guess I'll just have to see what all I can get away with too. Anyways, that's my shed saga. Thanks for reading. TLDR. I escalated the issue of my neighbor's encroaching shed to the town, finally reaching the supervisor who sympathized with my year-long frustration over the shed encroaching on our property. Despite previous surveys proving the encroachment, the building inspector asked for yet another surveyor to pin the property, which made no sense. After much back and forth, my dad, an engineer, suggested using the shed itself as a marker for the property line. Surprisingly, the junior inspector approved this. When my dad and husband marked the property line, the neighbor, once uncooperative, was suddenly friendly. After some delays, the shed was moved, though only 3.6 feet instead of the required 6 feet. Despite the inspector closing the case, I'm relieved it's off my land and can finally move forward, though baffled by the whole ordeal.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.